So when we look at Venus, we don't see the kind of details that we see with other worlds. When we see other worlds, we see more detail. For example, we look at the moon, we see craters, we see the seas, we see other sort of mountain ranges, things, all kind of structure. When we look at Mars, we see bright and dark markings on Mars. Even with a small telescope on Earth, you can see bright and dark markings and ice caps. There's things we can see there. We look at Jupiter, it's got stripes and storms. We look at Saturn, again, there's evidence of storms. The stripes on Saturn are much subtler, but they are visible. When we look at Mercury, the Italian astronomer Antoniotti recorded that he could see bright and dark markings, and from that he was able to get an idea of the rotation of Mercury. And then he turns around and looks at Venus. He doesn't see any of that. So we don't see hardly anything. The astronomers in the 1800s, in the 19th century there, they were studying Venus. They were trying to figure out what's going on here. They were able to figure out that when Venus passes in front of a star, rather than the star just like suddenly winking out like it does when the moon does it, it fades out over time, indicating that Venus has a pretty substantial atmosphere, and atmospheric extinction is a factor. The fuzzy edges of Venus indicates an atmosphere, and then possibly something in the atmosphere, like clouds blocking the view. By the time we get to the beginning of the 20th century, they had confirmed that Venus's surface is completely shielded from our view by cloud cover. And so those clouds are blocking our view. Well, that was a huge step forward, because on Earth, what are clouds made of? Water droplets. And so the clouds explain many things about Venus. So if we imagine we have the sun right here, we get sunlight here, and then we've got Venus, then we got Earth. Well, Venus is closer to the sun than Earth, and so it's going to be a little bit brighter. Almost a little bit less than twice as much sunlight as Earth gets. Well, it reflects about twice as much light as Earth does. So there was some speculation that underneath the surface of those clouds, on the surface of the planet, underneath those clouds, it might actually be similar solar radiation to what Earth gets, in which case it might be habitable. All those clouds would indicate possibly rain, water, oceans maybe. And on Earth, all of those things give rise to plants. Okay, and so the idea was that Venus might be a little bit warmer than Earth, but we got water, we got rain, we got oceans. It's like the tropics, they were thinking, a tropical paradise almost, totally covered in clouds. Now, the other interesting speculation that came about was that they did not understand how stars aged. So they looked at stars and they did not understand how stars gained energy. We now know it's nuclear fusion, but they used to think that stars started off hotter and they gradually got cooler. And so they looked at Venus, Earth, and Mars out here. And so they imagined that in the distant past that Mars would have been the first planet as the sun got cooler to become habitable. And then Earth would be kind of like Venus would be right now. Okay, and then eventually the sun cooled off, and then Venus is like it is now, and then Earth is the way Mars used to be, and Mars is going to be the way Earth will be. And then they looked at it and said, well, Venus is completely shrouded in clouds and wet. Earth has oceans and plenty of weather, and then Mars is a desert world. There's some clouds, there's some things there, but Mars is much more of a desert world. And so the idea was that planets somehow got drier as they got older. Now, that doesn't make any sense to me. I have no idea why they would think that, but that was a common thought at the beginning of the 20th century. About that time, then they were thinking, well, in that case, Mars is like Earth is going to be in the distant future, and Venus is like Earth was in the distant past. They had recently discovered the whole idea of dinosaurs in Earth's past, so there was actually serious speculation that on the surface of Venus, underneath all those clouds, there was a lush tropical jungle, possibly even with dinosaurs walking around on the surface. And these ideas were really pretty well popular. Now, this is about the same time that Herbert George Wells, British novelist, wrote a novel about Mars being in the future the way Earth is going to be, having advanced civilization that then came to Earth and tried to invade and take over, the War of the Worlds. Again, this was the idea they had. Now, the idea is totally and absolutely wrong, because we know, first of all, stars don't gradually cool off as they age. In fact, we really realize the sun's actually been gradually brighter as it's been aging. So it actually works the other way around. Okay, so all of these discoveries they started making then started to play out, and then the really bad thing was they discovered the clouds are not made of water at all. They have the spectrum of sulfuric acid. So it's like battery acid. Well, worse, it gets even worse than that. It turns out that Venus's atmosphere is almost all carbon dioxide. Carl Sagan, planetary astronomer, suggested that that would produce a huge greenhouse effect, all that carbon dioxide. And that it would be so hot that Venus would be actually giving off microwaves. And so Frank Drake, American astronomer, was able to measure those microwave emissions coming from Venus using the Green Bank Observatory telescope, radio telescope, and was able to confirm that in fact Venus has an enormous greenhouse effect going on. In fact, it's so hot that the surface of Venus is close to 900 degrees Fahrenheit. That's actually hotter than the surface of Mercury, which is much closer to the sun. And this is due to that greenhouse effect. So this pretty much decimates the idea of the surface being a lush tropical jungle with dinosaurs on it. This is far, far too hot for life to exist at all on the surface of Venus. The average temperature, like I said, 900 degrees Fahrenheit, 460 degrees Celsius. That's too hot for liquid water, too hot for, in fact, so hot that when we tried to send spacecraft to the surface of Venus, the Soviet spacecraft that landed could only operate for a short time before the heat penetrated the spacecraft and melted the solder joints holding together the circuit boards. So this is actually too hot for electronic equipment, too hot for life. In fact, it's so hot that some rocks we have on Earth even become soft. And so this is an extreme version of a greenhouse effect. And so, Venus is nothing at all like Earth. Even though it's about the same size, same mass, similar distance from the sun, everything seemed to look real nice for it, but it turns out it's really a very unpleasant world.